Hello everyone, Brian Johnson with thestockminer.com, back for a Thursday video. Big gap down today, NASDAQ getting killed. Not a good sign in the markets when the NASDAQ is getting so handily destroyed within the markets themselves. You want to see it showing some strength. It is showing lots and lots of weakness right now. The Dow is only down, I say only, 400 points at 3.68%. That's funny to say only. NASDAQ 5.22%. Huge move in the NASDAQ. So techs, Russells, none of them doing very well right now. Usually those are the leaders. They are now the laggers. That's not good for the market overall. So my ultimate sentiment is still to the downside, but we'll look at where we are right now. We had some beautiful entries earlier in the week. They just didn't work out. Above that 11.6, below the 11.3. We gapped down below the 11.3. There was a really nice formation last night on the futures right before the markets closed at 4:15. Well, markets closed at 4, but futures closed at 4:15. Right before that happened, we broke out of that formation. It was down all night long. So it was wonderful if you'd recognize the formation, could trade short all night. Otherwise, if you're just a regular day trader, it was tough this morning. As soon as the markets open, you're like, well, what do I do now? They rush to the downside, and before anybody really has a chance to make up their mind, the move was basically over. Ran into the 109 mark, bounced straight up, and as you see here on the diamonds, here's the show of the gap below this 11.3. Like I said, very difficult to trade this if you're not already in. Get the open, slash to the downside, bounce back up into this 109, let's just call it 110, 109.50, whatever. Draw a straight line across, it didn't go anywhere. This is a great way to get your head handed to you, is to try to trade then the chop sideways. I was doing that today in the room, and it took me a while to figure out we're not going anywhere. I kept getting my hand slapped every time I get into a trade in the futures. It'd take me out almost immediately. So me and the rest of the guys, we just sat around. Took a few trades here and there, but overall we never really got any real semblance of a move until right at the very end of the day. We finally got the break to the downside, played it for a few points there, and then outside of that, maybe a little bit at the very end of the day on the bounce back up. I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. Let's move on to the Dow. Show you the Indu. This doesn't show the gap, but it does show the move. Now, 1, 2, this all of here I think was wave 3. I really think this up here was the end of wave 4. Some people will say this is A of 4, this is going to be B of 4, then there's a C of 4. Great. My first reaction is that this is maybe the end of 4 up here. This is 1, 2, 3, could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of wave 1 of 5 down. Now, for those of you that are Elliotticians, and for those of you that are not, it's really just as simple. I'm going to break it down, Johnson terms, put it in the layman's terms for you. Okay, and this is how it goes. I really think we haven't seen much volatility this week from options expiration, and it's very uncommon that we don't see volatility. Good 1 or 2 days for sure is very, very common. It typically happens in the middle of the week, but whatever. End of the week, fine. So we get nothing all week long. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, straight sideways. Once again, notice how we can draw a line at 11.4. We didn't go anywhere all week long. Okay? Another great way to get your hand slapped if you're trying to trade this up and down. Anyway, we wake up this morning, huge move to the downside. There's your volatility, at least for one day. Then at the end of the day, we get this really nice bounce towards the very, very end of the day. I'm not so sure that doesn't continue into tomorrow. I really like some of these overhead areas that I've been watching. Might get even a gap up to start tomorrow. I'm seeing a little bit of overhead resistance already being broken in the after hours. And so tomorrow might start gap up. And where are we looking at? 11.2. 11.2 to 11.3. Really liking that area for a bounce. Now, all of the indices look the same. They all look 1, 2, 3-ish, whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish, I don't care. But they all look the same, okay? This 1, 2, this looks like kind of all of this a 3 move down, little 4 bounce to the upside, 5 down to finish it off. Point being, we break the 10.7, 10.6 mark, especially the 10.6 here in the Dow. The initial count of a 5 down is underway. We get back above 11.530. Could still be the larger A, then B, then C in front of us. So tomorrow, if we do start gap up, you want to look to see if there's any strength. And if we can get back above 11.3 even in my book, I'm still going, that's a pretty good move. If we can get back above 11.3, maybe start to slant my bias more towards a potential push towards these upper areas. But if we can't get much past 11.2 or so coming into next week, I still got to stick with my initial first count, and that'll be to the downside. All right, so that's everything looks the same. You're going to notice it as we flip through charts, but I wanted to cover that really quick with you and make it real simple. We get breaks above 11.53 eventually. I think the ABC's in effect, and it's still up into the 11.9 mark for a pullback. We can't get much past this area tomorrow. We stay there, and then next week start to accelerate downwards again. Definitely looking at wave 5 to the downside, which should take us well below 10.6, breaking to new lows at that point before we get the really much larger wave 2 pullback. That's my take. Dow daily here, you can see way down into these lower levels. Everything we messed around with 1, 2, 3 and last Friday, gone. See ya. Very reminiscent of how the markets work up in this area. And you can see down 3.68% by the time it was all done. NASDAQ 60 minutes, same thing, showing the gap very nicely. I really like this count as a 3 to the downside here. Gaps in the middle of 3s are very common. So really liking that look. More importantly, look how much deeper we are than a lot of the other indices. Breaks of 2050 and especially breaks of 2025 is what you really need to have on your charts going into tomorrow and next week for sure. Breaks of 2025, I think my wave structure to the downside is on its way. And we'll be looking at lower lows and everything by the time it's all over with, even breaking the 1100 mark in the SPX before the larger wave 2 pullback. Okay, so here we are on the NASDAQ, way down, almost 5% on the day. Now, this is the NDX I'm looking at. That is the 100 strongest stocks in the NASDAQ. Yeah, they don't look so good. Apple breaking 375 to the downside, which was one of my shorting opportunities, 385 to the long side. Google below 325, or 525 was my short. That doesn't look so good today either. And Baidu, not looking well as we come into the end of the week. So, by the way, you want to watch Baidu on the 200-day moving average, just as, for instance, keep that on your charts. Anything back below the 200-day moving average on the Baidu could get kind of nasty. So here it is again, NASDAQ on a daily, right back into these lower levels. Once again, very big gap here. A bounce tomorrow, I'm not sure. It might close it. I'm not sure we're going to get that high. Back below 2025, still one of the more major levels to be watching to the downside. No doubt about it. 1, 2, 3, 4, break that level 5 to the downside. I think it's pretty clear at that point. Otherwise, who knows, maybe just a chop sideways. Weekly as well, getting into these lower levels of 2050. We had a lot of hammer candles on the weeklies last week, guys. This is quasi-hammer, but much better representation of hammer candles on the other charts for the weeklies. Yeah, none of them are playing out this week. None of them were really all that legit. So here we go into these lower levels. If it's going to save any of this stuff, it's got a lot of work to do tomorrow. We're going to need at least a 5% push to the upside. Now that would be fun to trade. I just don't see it happening at this point. But watch that move tomorrow morning, especially if we gap up. SPX 60 minutes, same thing here. 1, 2, 3-ish, whatever. I think this could be ABC. I know some people are counting that in your heads, and that's fine. I understand. Point being, guys, above 1210. I love 1260 for our overhead. Tomorrow, though, if we just get a little bit of a bounce and push upwards, 1160 to 1170 is awesome overhead resistance right now. That could set up, some sort of a larger move then to the downside. Eventually, we will then break the 1100 mark, no question about it. One of my lower levels is like 1050 or something. So right now, 1050 on the downside if we break down and through this area. Here you see us kind of also hanging out here, 1140 with the huge red candle, much more bleeding, just like we've seen over and over again. And the VIX way up. Ooh, so 35% for the day, confirming everything we saw. As well as the weekly as we enter tomorrow. I thought, we get some push up in the markets, we'd see this thing come back down and visit this 2730. Yeah, not so much. Still holding very, very well up here. By the way, for those of you that like to play stuff, this VXX has been a monster lately. Been just a fantastic trade. I'm out of it now, but at one time I had a cost average of like 22 on this thing, waiting for the bounce to the downside. So for you bears, this is definitely something you want to watch as we go forward. When the markets go down, this thing goes up, and it's kind of a neat way to play it. Like I said, at one time I had a cost average of 22 in this. Had I just held, obviously we'd be up into the 40 mark, but there'll be another chance. We'll get a pull back and we'll do this all over again. So, anyway, moving on. That's the VIX. FAS, of course, getting stomped down here. I really like this one below 12, guys, for a short, especially into tomorrow. If we continue the selling pressure, below 12 looks cherry. Love it. You can even sneak in a little early, maybe 12.25 if you want to get aggressive. FAZ then to the long side, liking that over this little 67.50 into the 70 to 72.50 mark for sure. I think that would be the most logical place to see this go, and potentially, depending on the pressure that comes in, the banks have not done well here when the selling pressure comes in. This could maybe reach 75 as well. So good opportunities to trade here. Kind of liking the FAS trade a little bit better. Not only is it less expensive, but the setup is so nice right now. So keep all this in mind as we push forward, and we'll see you all again tomorrow.